bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya.
Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion and ignorance, are under the control of three deities, Brahma, Vishnu and Lord Shiva. Lord Vishnu is in charge of the mode of goodness, Lord Brahma is in charge of the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva is in charge of the mode of ignorance. Similarly, there are many other demigods in charge of the air department, the water department, the cloud department, etc. Just as the government has many different departments, so within this mature world, the government of the Supreme Lord has many departments, and all these departments function in proper order out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Demigods are undoubtedly controlling all matter, animate and inanimate, within the universe. But above them, the supreme controller is the personality of Godhead. Therefore, in the Brahma Samhita it is said, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Undoubtedly, there are many controllers in the departmental management of this universe, but the supreme controller is Krishna. There are two kinds of dissolutions. One kind of dissolution takes place when Brahma goes to sleep during his night, and the final dissolution takes place when Brahma dies. As long as Brahma does not die, creation, maintenance and destruction are actuated by different demigods under the superintendence of the Supreme Lord. Guṇābhimānino devāḥ, sarga-ādiṣu asya yad-bhayāt, vartante nuyugaṁ yeṣāṁ, vaśe, etac, cara-acaram. So, Lord Kapila Dev is about to complete the explanation about devotional service to his mother Devāhuti. So after having described why one should take the devotional service, and after having described how the rivers, the herbs, everything is growing because of fear of the personality of Godhead, he's now pointing out that the creation, maintenance and destruction is also done under the control of the Supreme Lord. And in the purport, reference is made to the three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion and ignorance, which are under the control of the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu and Lord Shiva. So, very often, we do not understand the respective positions of Brahma, Shiva and Lord Vishnu. This is also very often known as the Hindu Trinity. Those who studied in colleges, those who are trying to study this, the Vedic philosophy, call it the Hindu Trinity, Brahma, Shiva and Vishnu. So what is their actual position is actually explained in the second canto of the Bhagavatam. It is described what role each of them plays. The Lord is the supreme controller according to the Bhagavatam. Those who are trying to understand the Krishna conscious literature, they must understand the difference between God and the absolute truth. This is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Generally, God means one who is a controller, Ishvara. And we understand from the Vedic scriptures that there are many gods. But the absolute truth means from whom everything is emanating, to whom everything will return, and under whose control everything is working. So there is a difference between the absolute truth and God. Krishna is defined in the Srimad Bhagavatam to be the absolute truth and not God. Because God generally refers to one who is just as controller. So, Over here it is being explained that the three predominating deities, Brahma, Vishnu and Lord Shiva, each representing the different modes. For example, Lord Brahma, he has a specific role to play. Brahma's role is to create. Because Brahma has performed austerities for a very, very long time, he was given the special power by which he could create. So Brahma is also known as the superintendent engineer of this universe, just like you may see so many skyscrapers being built in downtown Toronto. But each of these skyscrapers has a chief engineer who is responsible for the project. So Brahma is a chief engineer responsible for this universe, for this creation. So his business is to create, and that is in the mode of passion. Then Vishnu, his business is to maintain. Vishnu maintains this, and Vishnu in the spiritual world is only associated with the quality or the mode of goodness. In the spiritual world, there is no tinge of the quality of passion and ignorance. Therefore, even when Vishnu is maintaining this universe, he doesn't get affected by the quality of passion and ignorance. Hence it is stated that Lord Vishnu, the maintainer, is in the mode of goodness always. And Lord Shiva, at the time of annihilation, he destroys everything. He dances. Some of you may have seen that famous picture of Lord Shiva, where dancing in the annihilating pose. That is called the annihilating pose, because by that wild dance, the whole universe kept annihilated. So Lord Shiva, he annihilates. Therefore Lord Shiva is considered to be the representative of the mode of ignorance. Now, we must understand the difference between these three different personalities further, because it is not to be understood that they're all on the same level. We know the story from the Krishna book about Bhrigu, how Bhrigu was sent by the great sages to test each of these personalities. I think I explained the story last time when I was here. Bhrigu was sent by the great sages to test which of these personalities, Brahma, Shiva or Vishnu, is really the predominating deity or most in the mode of goodness. So because the great sages could not determine who is really the chief or who really possesses the quality of goodness to the greatest extent. So Bhrigu first went to his father, Brahma, and he did not offer his respects to Brahma. Generally, when one approaches one's father or the disciple approaches a spiritual master, one must offer his obeisances. But Bhrigu did not do that. And Brahma was very offended. And Brahmaji was ready to curse. Those who are sleeping can stand up. And Brahmaji was ready to curse him. But then Brahmaji decided that he's a son, so he should not do it. But anyway, because of Bhrigu's not offering obeisances, Brahma was very much angered. Then Bhrigu went to Shiva. And as soon as Lord Shiva saw Bhrigu coming, he got up from his meditation and went to embrace him. But Lord Shiva's body had this dust on his body was covered with dust. So Bhrigu wanted to offend Lord Shiva. So he said, "You cannot touch me, you filthy person, don't touch me." So Lord Shiva got very offended, just like if somebody comes to embrace me and you say, "You filthy person, get out, don't touch me." So Lord Shiva felt very, very offended by this, and he said, he should be cursed. And Lord Shiva was about to curse Bhrigu when his wife, Parvati, who is known as Trigunyamai, because Parvati has within herself the qualities of all the three modes. At different times, different qualities manifest. The Parvati prevented Lord Shiva from cursing Vegu. And then Vegu went to Vishnu, who was lying down in the casual ocean being massaged by Lakshmi Devi. And he went and he straightway placed his feet on the chest of Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu, instead of getting angry at this, he said, "Oh, how fortunate I am that the Brahman has kept his feet on my chest." And Lord Vishnu did not get offended at all. So, Vishnu later on returned to the great sages and described how he thought the Lord Vishnu possessed the quality of goodness to the greatest degree. So the point is that Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, they're not to be considered to be on the same level. The Lord manifests himself in a variety of forms. This is confirmed by Brahma Samhita. Retam Achyutam Anadi Ananta Rupam. Ananta Rupam. Ananta Rupam means he has a variety of forms. You cannot limit God to having only one form or one son. A non-living living entity can have 10, 11, 50 children, and God can only have one son, or God can only have one form. This is a great insult to the Lord. In the Bhagavatam it is described that there are innumerable expansions or incarnations of the Lord. So, the point is that there is a difference between God and the Absolute Truth, and the Lord has innumerable energies. His internal energy, external energy, and the marginal energy. By the internal energy, one refers to the spiritual abode of the Lord. The external energy refers to the material manifestation. And the marginal energy refers to the living entity. The living entity is called marginal because he has the opportunity to either elevate himself or degrade himself. So, these three are known as the Guna Avatar. Lord Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu. They are known as the Guna Avatar. The incarnations of the Lord are innumerable. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that just like it is impossible to count the waves in an ocean, or to count the number of atoms that come and go out of the window, similarly, it is impossible to count the number of incarnations of the Lord. But nevertheless, the great sages have been able to classify the incarnations into 6 broad categories. So the incarnations, or the representatives of the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, that is being described in the verse that we are discussing today, these fall under what is known as the Guna Avatar category. Guna means quality, Chaturvarna Maya system, Guna, Karma, Vibhagataha, Guna. So the Vedic literature points out that the living entity is determined according to the Guna, the quality. So each of these represents a different quality. Lord Vishnu represents goodness, Brahma represents passion, and Lord Shiva represents ignorance. So, these are known as the Guna Avatar. And besides the Guna Avatar, there are other categories such as there is the Prusa Avatar. What is the meaning of the word avatar? This should be understood because these days this is a very common word. People do not understand the meaning of this word. Still they use it all the time. In certain parts of the world, there you can buy avatars by the dozen. So, what does avatar mean? Lord Chaitanya explained this to Sanatana Goswami. Avatar means one who descends, and one who descends on the order of the Lord. And according to the Vedic scriptures, the genuine avatar can be recognized on the basis of 2 dimensions. One is known as the principal feature, and the other is known as the marginal feature. By the principal feature, reference is made to the bodily description of that incarnation, And by the marginal creature, it is understood the qualities that he will perform. Just like, for example, in the case of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is described, in the age of Kali, the Lord will appear as one who is golden in complexion. So golden in complexion, boy, it's transcendental meditation of Sahamya, scientific. Okay. The golden in complexion refers to the principal feature, and that he will be engaged in propagating the holy names of the Lord refers to the marginal feature. So the different incarnations of the Lord who can be recognized on the basis of the description in the Vedas about the principal and the marginal feature. All the incarnations of the Lord are described in the Vedic scriptures. So the first of these categories is called the Prusa Avatar. The Prusa Avatar's business is to create. At the time of creation, the Mahatattva is let loose, and then the Lord expands as the Mahavishnu, then as the Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and then as the Shirodakshai Vishnu. So this is known as the Prusa Avatar, and the business of this expansion is to create. The Mahatattva lets loose, the Mahavishnu breathes out innumerable universes that come up from the pores of his body, just like perspiration comes up from the pores of our body. Just like that, different universes are coming up from the pores of the Lord's body. And then the Lord expands as Garbhodakshai Vishnu and maintains each of these universes. And then he again expands as Shirodakshai Vishnu and enters into every atom and every living entity. So this is known as the Prusa incarnation. Then there is the Guna incarnation, which we have discussed. Then there is the Leela Avatar. Leela Avatar consists of those who appear with the Lord to perform his different transcendental pastimes. Then there is the Manvantara Avatar category. There are innumerable Manus in one day of Brahma. So there are innumerable Manvantara avatars also according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then there is the Yuga Avatar. There are 4 principal ages: the Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. In each of these yugas, the Lord appears under a different complexion and engaged in a different transcendental pastime. So, and then there is the Shaktavesh Avatar. The Shaktavesh Avatar is of 2 types: direct and indirect. Direct Shaktavesh Avatar refers to when the Lord himself descends, and indirect refers to when the Lord empowers somebody to preach on his behalf. So these are basically speaking the different categories of incarnations of the Lord. So the Vishnu expansion, the Lord Vishnu expansion, belongs to the Vishnu Tattva category. And Lord Shiva, he falls in a category of himself. Even though Lord Shiva is an expansion of Lord Vishnu, but because he gets affected by the modes of material nature, he gets out of the Vishnu category, Vishnu Tattva category, and falls into the category known as the Shiva Tattva category. So Lord Shiva belongs to the Shiva Tattva category. Sometimes an important question arises: what is the difference between Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu? Prabhupada used to reply to this by illustrating the example of yogurt and milk. Milk can be transformed into yogurt, but yogurt cannot be transformed back into milk. So similarly, Lord Shiva is an expansion of Lord Vishnu, but Lord Shiva cannot perform the same function that Vishnu can perform. In other words, Lord Shiva cannot become Vishnu again, cannot become Vishnu. So, the business of Lord Brahma is to create, construct, generate and procreate. This is done in a mode of passion or rajaguna. The business of Lord Vishnu is to sustain, to maintain, to preserve, to endure. This is reflected in the quality of the mode of goodness, and the destruction process is a reflection of the mode of ignorance, and that is done by Lord Shiva, their devastation and dissolution. So these are the Guna Avatars, and in the Bhagavad Gita it is explained, as long as the living entity is under the influence of these modes, there one is always bound to remain entangled in this material world. That's the point to understand. Because even if one is in the mode of goodness, one cannot free himself from the cycle of birth and death. This must be clearly understood. That the mode of goodness is certainly higher than the mode of passion and ignorance. But the mode of goodness does not take one back to Godhead. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Brahma bhuvana loka pnara vitunirajana mamupedi vikhanti atana jamana vidyate. From the topmost planet to the bottommost planet, all the places of misery where repeated births and deaths are taking place. So the point is that, as Prabhupada points out in this purport also, there is a distinction between the demigods and the Supreme Lord. It is not to be understood that the demigods and the Supreme Lord are on the same level. At the very inception of our talk today, we had pointed out the difference between God and absolute truth. As Prabhupada explains over here in the purport, the demigods are the different controllers of the different departments. Brahmaji also says, Ishvara Parama Krishna. So what does it mean, Ishvara Parama Krishna? It means that Krishna is not an ordinary Ishwar. Krishna is the Param-Ishwar. Param-Ishwar means he is the topmost of all the controllers. There are various controllers. Ishwara means one who is a controller. There is no shortage of controllers in this world. One can say in a household, the husband is the controller. One can say in a country, the prime minister is the controller. One can see these young children on the playing with ants that come out of earth. In those situations, one can say that the children are the controllers because the ant's life depends upon the mercy of the child. So there are different controllers. And when one goes beyond this universe, then there are the different demigods who are the controllers of the different planets. But Brahmaji says, Ishvara Parama Krishna. But Krishna, you are the supreme controller, Parameshwar. Parameshwar means the absolute truth, the highest personality. There is no one higher than Krishna. The Brahmaji says, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Svachidananda Vigraha. Anādir Govinda Sarva Karana. So this Ishwar, the Supreme Ishwar, is the cause of all causes. He is eternal, full of knowledge and blissful. And thou, he is the cause of all causes. There is no cause for his existence. So this you must carefully understand, the position of the absolute truth. So Krishna is that absolute truth, where the demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Indra, they can be called gods. So there can be many gods. That is a fact. There is no shortage of gods because God means one who is a controller. But there is only one absolute truth. There is only one Parameshwar. There are many Ishwaras, but there is only one Parameshwar. And actually, that is Krishna. Actually, well, each of us is an Ishwar also. This will surprise you. Each of us is an Ishwar. How? This is explained in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam. But the word used is the word Pranjan. Pranjan means controller of the body, owner of the body, the king of the body. So each of us is the king of our body. We can decide in which direction we want the chariot to run. We can decide whether we want the chariot to run on the divine path or whether we want it to run on the materialistic path. Where we can decide whether we want to choose the path of Privati Marg or Nivrati Marg. That is the path of renunciation or the path of sense enjoyment. The Bhagavatam, after analyzing the pravati and the nivritti mark, concludes that the path of renunciation is certainly more glorious and joyful than the path of sense gratification. So therefore we are all Ishwaras, or we are all controllers. So, why do people approach the demigods? This is a good question. Why? Why do they approach the demigods? This was explained in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. That is, because they have mature desires, and they think that by going to the demigods, the mature desires will be fulfilled. Quickly, they go to the demigods. But one who is more intelligent, according to the Bhagavad Gita, he doesn't go to the demigods. He goes directly to the Supreme Lord, just like in the case of Gajendra. Gajendra's foot was cracked by the crocodile. The demigods were just watching the fun. The demigods, Indra, Shiva, they were all watching. Gajendra struggled for 1,000 years to get his foot out of the crocodile's mouth. And he was unable to do so. And then Gajendra went directly to the Supreme Lord. The demigods were offended. They were offended by, they were just waiting. Now he's going to turn to us for help. But Gajendra just superseded them and went directly to the Supreme Lord. Because he knew that everything comes directly from the Lord. So he went directly to the Lord. The demigods cannot do anything. For example, when Lord Ramachandra, when Ravan was in danger, he went to Lord Shiva for help. He went to Parvati. And Parvati recommended Ravan's case to Lord Shiva. Parvati said, Ravan has been worshipping you so nicely for such a long time, why don't you help him? Very often in society people go to the husband for the wife. So this is nothing new. It traces back to millions of years. So Ravana went to Parvati and said, please tell your husband to help me. But Lord Shiva told Parvati, I can't do anything. I can't do anything in front of the personality of Godhead. So the demigods are not more powerful than the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the absolute truth. This was also clearly illustrated in the case of Lord Krishna and Indra. Lord Krishna had prevented his father and the inhabitants of Vrindavan from making sacrifices to him. And Indra retaliated very severely by releasing unlimited water in the form of rain and clouds, thundering and lightning. But Lord Krishna took care of the inhabitants of Vrindavan by lifting the giant mountain Govardhan hill with the smallest finger of his left hand for a period of 14 days. And thus he was able to defeat the demigods. He was able to defeat Lord Indra's plan. So the point is, one who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, he doesn't have to worry about pleasing the demigods. Just like very often one may see that, especially the Hindus, to be on the safe side, they'll worship everyone. They don't want to take chances. They feel that Shiva represents one mode, Vishnu represents another, so they don't want to take chances. In other words, they acknowledge that Krishna is the Supreme, but still they have some doubts. So they probably believe in the theory, precaution is better than cure. So they take a precaution by having pictures of all the demigods also. But actually this is a great offense to the Lord. Just like if you go to a factory and you rate the employees on the same level as the proprietor. That's a great offense to the proprietor, isn't it? And especially when the Vedic scriptures also clearly establish this. So to think that the demigods and the Supreme Lord are on the same level and they both should be given the same degree of worship, this is not intelligent. This is not the conclusion of the Vedas. The Bhagavad Gita, for example, states, Udavan gitanti sattva sa madhyate samti rajasa jaganya guna vritti sa that is, those who worship in the mode of goodness, they are elevated to Udavan Gachanti Satvasa. Those who perform devotional service in the mode of goodness, they are elevated to the higher planet, Udavan, higher planet. And those who render devotional service in the mode of passion, they take their birth in the middle planetary system. And those who are in the mode of ignorance, they take this birth in the Adokachanti Tamasa, in the lower planetary system. So to think that all paths lead to the same goal is just like thinking that you can buy a ticket to Montreal and hope to travel anywhere in Canada on that ticket. You can't. You get what you pay for. So you get, if you worship the demigods, you can get some elevation to higher planets, some more sense gratification. But if you approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you get what is known as the classes of devotional service. We were describing to you 2 days ago how Bali Maharaj regrets the fact that Indra chose the path of sense enjoyment instead of choosing the path of self-realization. Prabhupada used to give an example. When you approach a rich man, you don't ask him for something small. You ask him just like there's a story of a lady who met Krishna, and Krishna said, "Can I help you?" She said, "Yes, please help me lift that bundle which had fallen on the ground." So we don't approach Krishna to give us something small like sense gratification. Because sense gratification is available even without asking. This is confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj confirms that the living entity when he is born, sukham indriyakam daitya deha yugena dhainam. That is the living entity when he is born, sukham. He comes with his quota of happiness and distress. So that it is nothing unusual to realize happiness and distress. So to approach a demigod and to pray, please give me some sense gratification, that is not really very intelligent. That's asking the Lord or the demigod for something very, very small. Rather, the desire should be to please realize the causes of devotional service. Because devotional service gives a level of happiness that nothing else can give one. So the conclusion of the Vedic scriptures is that Vasudeva or Krishna should be worshipped in all situations. In the Bhagavatam it is said, Vasudeva para Veda. The goal of all the Vedic study is to serve Vasudeva. Vasudeva Paramatha. The goal of all these sacrifices that one performs is to please Vasudeva. Vasudeva Para Yoga. The goal of all yogic performance is to understand Vasudeva. Yoginam api sarvesham. Krishna says he is the topmost yogi. So the goal of yoga is to understand Krishna or Vasudeva. Vasudeva Para Kriya. The goal of all spiritual activities also is to serve Vasudeva. If one is earning something, if one is realizing some activities, the goal should be to serve Vasudeva. Vasudeva Param Jnanam. The goal of all knowledge also is to serve Vasudeva. Unfortunately today, those who are knowledgeable, instead of worshipping Krishna, they tend to defy him the most. Therefore the Srimad Bhagavatam states, 4 things becomes one's enemy for progress in spiritual life. One of them is beauty, one of them is high education, one of them is wealth. So if one is very educated, he becomes like an ass. This is confirmed by Thakur Bhakti Vinod. Thakur Bhakti Vinod said that this modern materialistic education has only succeeded in making these people into fools and asses, because it is feeding an artificial illusory covering by which the living entity is made to forget what his real business is. So, Vasudeva Param Jnana. The goal of Vedic study is Jnanam. The goal of all knowledge is to serve Vasudeva. Vasudeva Param Tapo. The goal of all austerity should also be to serve Vasudeva. One should not perform austerity for some personal gratification or pleasure. But if Vasudeva is not the goal of the activity, then it is useless. Just like in some parts of the world, unless the politician goes to jail a few times, he has no chance of being elected to office. So they purposely cook up a story by which they can be arrested and make the headlines and end up in jail. So of course going to prison is naturally a little austere. But the goal of that tapasya or austerity is not to please Vasudeva. Just like Prabhupada gives example, there's some yogis who in the very hot month, they will light fire all around and sit in the middle of that fire. Or who in the cold month will go and stay in water for extended periods. So that is also just artificial. Or there's some spiritualists who do not talk. You see a lot of these in India these days. They get the adoration of people by the fact that they have controlled their tongue. They will just speak. So a lot of people flock around. They all such a great saint. He doesn't talk. He hasn't talked for 10 years, 12 years. But Prabhupada says, a fool is recognized when he opens his mouth. So, because they have nothing to speak, they think the best path for getting followers is to just close their mouth. They shut their mouth up. So anyway, naturally shutting up the mouth is some sort of tapasya. But the goal of the tapasya is also not to please Vasudeva, so it is simply a waste of time. Shrama eva hi kevalam. Simply a waste of time. Then it says Vasudeva paro dharmo. The goal of dharma is to understand Vasudeva. Dharma is taken at different levels. For example, generally by and large, people take to dharma to realize artha, kama and moksha. Artha means economic gain, kama means sense gratification, moksha means liberation. So they take to dharma so that they can get some wealth. That wealth will give them facility for sense gratification. And when they've had enough of sense gratification, they will say, God, please give me liberation. But this Srimad Bhagavatam, however, rejects the utilization of dharma for the realization of karma, for the realization of artha, kama and moksha. And instead, the Srimad Bhagavatam propounds the real dharma, which is dharma pojitaha kaitwata parmo nirmacharam supam. That is, the Srimad Bhagavatam completely rejects the utilization of dharma for the purpose of economic gain or liberation, and instead it propounds the highest good. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami has called this Nigama-kalpataror galitam phalam, the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge. This is the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge because this was compiled by Vyasadeva at a very mature stage in his life. Vyasadeva, even after having compiled the Vedas, the Vedanta Sutra, was still feeling dissatisfied. So on the advice of his spiritual master, he compiled this most beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam, which consists of 18,000 verses, and which has been described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be the spotless Purana. So the goal of all dharma, as the Bhagavatam confirms, should be to please Vasudeva, Vasudevam Param Gati. And also the goal of one's life should be to please Vasudeva. So this is what Lord Kapila is also advising his mother. The goal of one's life should be to please Vasudeva, and Vasudeva is another name for Krishna, and one who is trying to please Vasudeva by the realized path of devotional service, he knows the difference between the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. Therefore, as the Srimad Bhagavatam says, one can free himself from the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance by taking to the process of devotional service. Tadurajastamo bhava kama lobhadayaschaye. So if you want to free yourself from the influence of Rajaguna, Tamagun, Sadoraj, Samabhava, Kama, Lopadaya, Chaye. So if you want to free yourself from these influence of the different modes, then the only solution is taking to the path of devotional service, which has been explained by Lord Kapila Dev in this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So to summarize, the different modes and their different functions executed by the predominating deities, and there is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the predominating deities, which have been explained in the purport and which we have discussed today. Hare Krishna.